All right. Hello, folks. All right, welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. If you wouldn't mind popping yourselves on mute, I'm the only voice that should be heard at this point in proceedings. So welcome everyone to the 2020 BusVic Women on Board event, where we will explore the age difference during an event with a difference in a year that has been incredibly different. I'm Julia Evans, and again, delighted to be your host for this great event. And for those that I haven't met, I'm the director of consulting firm Corvin that provides education strategy, member and stakeholder engagement, and research and advocacy services to industry associations and corporates. I've been involved with this event, Women on Board, since 2008 and was appointed, along with Anna Tyban, joining us today, to the BusVic board last year. So a big hello to you all. A massive shout out to our regulars who support this event year in, year out, and to our first timers, welcome. Before we jump into the program, let's take a moment to walk through how we'll be using Zoom today. Some of us are probably Zoom experts by now, with others still learning the ropes. So one of the things we most enjoy about this annual event is the interactivity, and we're aiming to incorporate those elements today. The first thing we'd like you to do is to ensure that your screen is on speaker view. Pardon me. This will allow you to have whoever is speaking in full view on your screen, rather than looking at 80 people resembling the opening credits of a Brady Bunch episode. So you can switch to speaker view by going to the top right-hand corner of your screen and clicking view, and then select speaker view, not gallery view. Give you a moment to do that. Now, on the bottom left of your screen, you'll see a microphone and a video camera. Now, we'll manage the mute function today, and if time allows, we will unmute people to ask some questions. And you can turn your video on and off as much as you like, but it truly is wonderful to see so many faces from around the country, and Victoria in particular. So throughout the event, we'll be using the chat box, and you can find this at the bottom of your screen. It's a speaking bubble. Now, if you click on this, the chat box will remain up during the entire event. And this is where you can post comments and questions and any links to resources at any time. And this is where we'll be fielding questions for our speakers as well. Anything you do write in the chat box will be seen by everybody, so bear that in mind. And as always, we'd be grateful if comments and questions remain constructive and focused on the topic at hand. So if we wouldn't mind having a go at the chat box now, all I'd like you to do is just type in hi and tell us where you are around the country. Just a quick little hi, tell us where you are. Camberwell, Glenroy, sunny Truganina, Nicole, you're just Nicolette, you're my neighbour. Traralgon, North Melbourne. Lounge room, fabulous. All right, we're all over the place. Welcome, welcome, welcome all of you. Oh, Hazel, I'm delighted that you could join us from sunny Bort. This is extraordinary. Okay, also too on the bottom of your screen, you'll see something called reactions. And here you can see a thumbs up, a clapping hands icon, and some other fun things as well. So be free feel to use those during the day that we've got together too. Now, one final feature that we'll be using today, and this is why we've chosen Zoom meetings, is the breakout room function. So during the course of the next couple of hours, from time to time, you'll be randomly moved to a small group, giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself to others and to have a quick chat about the questions posed by our speakers. Now, these breakout rooms, there is no need for you to touch anything on your computer or your device. All of this will happen magically, and we will move you in and out of breakout rooms, and this will be automatically done. Now, you can leave a breakout room at any time and return to the main event, as in where we are now. And if someone does decide to leave your small group, please don't be offended, okay? Now, also too, if for some strange reason you are booted out of Zoom, simply go back and find the link, the email that you received from Lauren Bradford, excuse me, with the event details, and click on the Zoom link to re-enter the event. And we'll have our first breakout room soon. Also too, this event will be recorded and posted at a later date, so we can always go back and feel free to get the goodness. So we turn to today's theme, and it's about the age difference. Now, there was a short video from the London Business School on the 100-year life we encouraged you to see prior to today. No worries if you missed it. I'll pop the details of the video in the chat box soon so you can have a look at it at the break and in your own leisure. What the video shows is that research indicates that we're living longer. Now, this is not new for most of us, but we're going to be living longer to 100 years and possibly beyond. And they suggest that the key to living a successful 100-year life is to carefully consider how we will use that extra time. We will be working longer, learning new skills, and reinventing ourselves over and over again during the course of our life. Now, this poses a number of challenges for businesses and our industry that have come into sharp view in 2020. Now, if you think about the language this year has given us, the words and phrases we now use: unprecedented, pivot, snapback, new normal, Zoom, COVID safe, essential workers, lockdown, isolation, quarantine, social distancing, remote everything, and get on the beers. So we have this language now to explain our collective experience, and it has been a doozy of a year. We've had severe drought, bushfires, pandemic everything, and recession. And every aspect of our lives has been touched in some way this year. Business survival, community recovery, and concerns for our future workforce are increasingly becoming top of mind, especially if we're living and working longer. So today we will explore the future workforce more closely and the why and way businesses need to adapt to the next generation and the ageing workforce. And we welcome our guest speakers joining us today. We will start shortly with age difference trends in superannuation from Ash Meter from Australian Super. From there, Rachel Palmer from Transitioning Well will share insights emerging from the Ageing Workforce Ready project that many of you may know about. And finally, Anna Tyburn from Latrobe Valley Bus Lines will lead a discussion with Chelsea Robbins from the Dysons Group and Jack Flood from Flood's Bus Lines on millennials and workforce futures. We also welcome our major sponsors for the event, proudly supported by Volvo Bus Australia and their sales and service support partners in Victoria, C&V Truck and Bus, and we certainly welcome them today. And at this stage, I'd like to hand over to David Mead from Volvo Bus Australia to say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Julia, and good morning to everyone. A lot of familiar faces on the call here, and it's a real shame we can't be face to face. On behalf of my team at Volvo Bus, a very big warm welcome to this year's event, and thanks to the team at BusVic and Julia, our MC again. What can we say about 2020? We can say it's tested us and we've had our challenges, but it's also brought some opportunities. So for Volvo Bus, we're spread across the country from Brisbane to Perth to Melbourne to Sydney. We haven't seen each other in almost 12 months, but we've found new ways of working, and we've employed new people and got them into the organisation and done a whole lot of things differently, like Julia said. And we know the challenge isn't over yet. So our discussions this year have been around our routines, like Julia said, working from home, and actually having the stamina to get through all of this, the stamina to come out the other side of this horrible disease. So right now, our message to the industry is quite simple. We'll be here today, tomorrow, whenever you're ready and whenever you need us again, whatever lies ahead. We know how hard some of the customers have done it in 2020, and we've done our very best to stay close and found ways to support each other in this sort of crazy time. Our support of this event spans over almost 10 years, and that's because at Volvo, diversity and inclusiveness are just part of what we do every day. In our bus organisation, and we're the largest in the country, we have a number of different nationalities and religions. We have an age range, certainly relevant to today's topic, from 20 to 66 years of age. On our management team, we have a gender split of 50%, and we have a real diversity across our management team. And so that's why we take our commitment to this event so seriously and have for well over a decade. We understand the need for diversity in managing things like age and gender and experience, but it's a bit more than that, because we like to think that we harness it every day to deliver what we do in the marketplace. And that's pleasingly the market leader, our 11th year in a row as Australia's #1 brand. So finally, I want to take this chance to thank all of our team at Volvo Bus, but also thank our partners in Victoria, the C&V Group. They've done an extraordinary job in supporting our customers in Victoria, in keeping their facilities and their teams active and supporting our customers.
Terrific. Thank you so much, David, and again, a big shout out to the Volvo team and their partners here in Victoria, CMV Truck and Bus, for joining us today. I too would like to extend my thanks to the BusVic team. Today we've had to do some, a bit of shimmy. Initially we were going to meet face to face, but here we are in a different form of face to face. So certainly to Chris Lowe, the Executive Director, and the most superb Tourism and Events Manager, Lisa Muston, and the marvellous Membership Officer, Lauren Bradford. Thank you. As always, you can connect with BusVic's social media community today via the hashtag BusVic and their handle BusVic Tweets. And I put the challenge out there to everyone to maybe tweet a photo of your best seat in the house for this year's event from wherever you are. So at this point, let's go to our first breakout room. Oof, here we all are. Reappearing well. Well, there you go. That technology worked, tick the box. What I invite you to do at this point, as you're beginning to come back into the main room, is just in the chat box, maybe note a couple of the comments or the responses that were happening in your little small group chat to the question, what does the age difference actually mean? And you'll see some responses already there from Chris and Rachel, but just take a moment to kind of tap in some of the thoughts that you were having in that small group experience. So we've got diversity of opinions from all age groups and inclusion. Technology comes up as something that's quite common across the responses as well. Felicity's group, sharing of knowledge across the different age brackets, and that goes back and forth if you're young or old, or maybe even young at heart. Joanne's group was talking about the difference between work expectations and technology, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that today, perhaps in Rachel's session shortly. Okay, so there's some really interesting themes coming out of this. It's thinking about sharing learning and sharing information, but also to skill development as well, looking at the ways in which we do kind of learn more about technology, workplace needs, and resilience is something that's popping up too. And adaptation. So Anna's group was talking about the need to look at physical limitations of older workers or even younger workers. Okay, I think these themes are going to continue throughout the course of our event today. And I encourage you to think about, if this is what the age difference means, what does it look like in our organisations, and what can we actually do to help facilitate bringing these things out? How can we draw on intergenerational or inter-age information and cross-learning so we can kind of create these wonderful, resilient, sustainable businesses? So at this point, let's turn to our first session, and we're going to have a beautiful presentation. So our first presenter is Ashima Mehta from Australian Super, and Ash will use this time just to set up her PowerPoint. Ash is a strategic customer research and insights professional with over 10 years experience in major consulting firms and private enterprises. She is currently the Innovation Insights Manager at Australian Super. Ash is passionate about telling a story with data and understanding customers on a deeper level. And the story she will share with us today is emerging trends on how our age may be impacting how we behave and interact with our superannuation. We have Ash for a very short time today due to her other commitments, and pending time, we may take a couple of questions from the chat box. So again, feel free to note any comments or questions in the chat box and we'll pick them up. So at this stage, Ash, welcome to your first Women on Board event, and over to you.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. As Julia mentioned, my name's Ash and I'm Senior Manager of Innovation Insights at Australian Super. And I suppose what that really means is that I'm responsible for the primary market research that we do at the fund, which is essentially qualitative and quantitative research, which you may have participated in before. Qualitative research are things like focus groups or one-on-one interviews, and quantitative research is the surveys that you, I'm sure, all receive from various companies in your time, and you may or may not answer them, but essentially they're the two methodologies that we utilise at the fund to extract insights from our members, to really build a deeper understanding about them and their behaviours. And that's what I'm here to share with you this morning, insights about our superannuation members at the fund, their behaviours, their actions regarding early release, and how your BusVic members compare. So first, I'll introduce you to the 4 life stages that we segment our members by at Australian Super. So all our members are of a variety of age, and what we call our under 30-year-old members is our starters, and this is because they're typically starting their working an adult life. They're likely to be living at home or in a share house. Retirement is a very, very long way away for them, and thus superannuation, they're a little bit disengaged with it. They don't quite understand, so their knowledge is a little bit low because it's too far away for them to see as quite that relevant right now. Then our second segment is the builders segment, and they are our 30 to 49-year-olds, and they're called builders because they're building their life. They're often starting families here. They are building their wealth. They're getting to the sort of peaks of their career, and managing their finances in a more holistic manner. The balances are also starting to get a little bit big, which means they start to then suddenly ask questions and make changes to their super. As they get a little bit more engaged. Then we have our planner segment, and these guys are 50 plus, but still in the workforce. The impending anxiety around retiring is quite strong because it's the fear of the unknown. They don't know quite what to expect from retirement. And we find there's 2 different types of planners. There's those that are becoming a bit more risk averse and lowering their risk in their superannuation, starting to put more money into their super, extra contributions, and really getting quite conservative in their behaviours. And then there's these other types of planners who start changing their investment options to the high risk options, saying, I've got 10 years, I've got to go as hard as I go, you know, it's now or never. And they're quite fearful of making the wrong decision because they realise now at this life stage that super is quite significant. I need it to work for me, and I don't want to make the wrong decision about which fund I'm with, or do I take my money out, or do I convert it to a pension, and all these things. And then our final segment on the right-hand side is our retirees, and they're also 50 plus, but they're retired. So as you know, retirement isn't a set age in the world. It can just happen. But what we find with our retirees is that they're much more they're more confident because they've made all those decisions in their planner life stage. So they're confident with the decisions they've made. They're more relaxed. The anxiety is gone. They've taken that leap into retirement, and it wasn't as daunting as they had first expected. And they're just focused on maximising their health and their wealth, making their money work for them, their living arrangements, and really connecting with family and the community and enjoying their life in retirement. The next section of the presentation will focus on member behaviours, covering awareness of certain things, their knowledge, and actions taken at the fund. So the first behaviour we're showing here is how members join Australian Super. So there are 2 ways that you can join Australian Super. You can either join directly through the website, making a choice yourself, or through your employer when you start a job and you pick their default fund. And overall in accumulation, which is our members who are not retired, the split between joining direct and joining via an employer is roughly 50-50 now. In retirement, all members join themselves because they're no longer employed, and so that channel of joining is not there. And the largest segment we see that joins through their employer is our starters, who, as I mentioned before, have lower engagement. They often don't want to be seen as annoying by selecting their own fund when they start a job, because they're usually in their first full-time job, so it's quite a big deal. And sometimes they don't even know that they have a choice when it comes to choosing a super fund. When we ask our members who chose to join us directly, why did you pick Australian Super? We see a lot of consistencies in the reasons between all the life stages. Investment performance, recommendations from others, fees, and our reputation are consistently cited by all four segments as reasons why they picked us. However, there are a couple of nuances between the ages. Starters are more likely to join us because we were already their employer's default fund. The builders talk about our investment options that we offer as a reason. As I mentioned before, they're becoming more engaged now and they want their money to work for them. So they start switching investment options and the way that their money is invested. Planners like that we don't have advisor commissions, as impartiality is quite important to them because they're fearful of making those wrong decisions. So they want to make sure that any advice they're getting is impartial and not biased. And among retirees, already being a member is quite a strong reason because they were, more often than not, they were a member of us in accumulation before opening that pension account, as well as advisor impartiality they also mention. On this slide here, what we've charted is the proportion of members by our life stage segments who are aware that they pay an admin fee for their super. As you can see here, among our younger segments on the left-hand side bar, awareness is pretty low, with only 2 in 3 starters being aware that they pay an admin fee. That means 1 in every 3 members under 30 don't know that they're paying an admin fee for their superannuation. Whereas once you get up to the right-hand side to the retirees, almost every single member knows I pay an admin fee. Interestingly, however, you notice that as awareness increases by the life stage segment, knowledge doesn't. And that is, you become more aware that you're paying a fee, but you still don't know how that fee is charged. So what that means is that awareness doesn't equal knowledge. And we find that we see this quite often in superannuation. People become more engaged and more aware, but it's still such a complex area that the knowledge isn't quite there as they progress. Similarly, as members get older, they're more likely to know that their money that goes into super through their employer, the 9.5%, is invested. Surprisingly though, even amongst our planners on the right-hand side, 1 in 4 don't know what happens to their super. So they either think it goes into a bank account, they stated some other thing that happens to it, or they simply tick the box on the survey that said, I don't know. Although this is better than the 41% of our starters, our younger members, who don't know that their super is invested for them. This is particularly important as many super funds, including Australian Super, talk about investment returns or investment asset ownership. But we need to keep in mind that for a portion of our member base, this wouldn't make sense because they don't realise that their money is invested for them. On this slide here, there's a variety of ways that members can interact with us and their superannuation accounts. You can call the contact centre, you can set yourself up with an online account, you can log into that online account, or you can open the mobile app. Due to commercial confidentiality, we've merged what our members do across those 4 things into one and provided an average engagement with customer service score here. And as you can see, similar to the other trends, as members get older and perhaps as their balances get bigger and they become more engaged with their superannuation, their propensity to interact with their account and with us increases. We're also able to look at the actions that members are taking when they log into their online account or open their mobile app. So we know what people are doing once they're in their online service as well. And while most actions are quite common between the segments, there are some nuances between the ages. When members log into the online portal, starters are more likely to get an investment update. Builders are more likely to nominate beneficiaries, and we know from other insights and studies, and we'll see in a few slides' time, that insurance becomes increasingly important for this segment. And planners are most likely to be logging into the online portal and downloading their annual statement. Within the mobile app, the nuances between the segments are that starters are most likely to be flicking their details onto an employer and also reviewing their fees. Younger members, we find, are more sensitive to fees as their balances are smaller and therefore the fees take up a larger chunk of their balance. Builders and planners are more likely to be viewing their annual statement within the mobile app, and planners are also more likely to be using the live person chat function that's embedded within the app. When we ask members, what do you do when you receive a physical letter in the mail from financial institutions, so not just us, any financial institution, the majority of them don't read the contents of the letter carefully. And especially among our younger segments, the builders and the starters and the builders, only approximately 1 in 3 said that they read these letters carefully. Again, the retirees are most likely to take their time to read the letters, and the builders were the most likely to say that they put the letter in a pile for later due to the likely lack of time that they have. They're in family formation, peak of their careers, and they intend to get to it, but often don't. We also notice that the propensity to make an investment choice, that is to switch how your money is invested from, say, the balanced option into another option that members are defaulted into, increases by life stage. While less than 1 in 10 starters or 8% have made an investment choice, this increases to just over 2 in 3 amongst our retirees. However, the choices that our members make when they switch their investments varies by age. Younger members are more likely to switch into our high growth option or Australian and international equities, as all 3 of those options that I've just mentioned are higher risk but higher reward, and they think that they've got a long time to withstand any downturns in the market. Whereas our older members, you'll see, are more likely to be risk averse and pick options such as cash or stable or conservative balanced. And these are our lower risk, lower reward options. These members are nearing or in retirement, and therefore they're much more sensitive to capital loss at that age. When we look at our members' behaviour in relation to insurance, we know that awareness of insurance is typically fairly high. That is, people generally have heard of the 3 types of insurances: death cover, total and permanent disability, and income protection. We see that the lowest level of awareness is amongst our youngest members, the starters, in knowing what TPD is. However, similarly, when we ask members how much they know about these insurances, so not only have they heard of them, but what do you know about them, we start to see again, similarly to admin fees, that awareness doesn't equal knowledge. Among our starters, on average, only 1 in 5 say that, I know quite a bit about this insurance type. This increases to about 1 in 4 amongst builders. And the highest level of knowledge is amongst our planner segment, with approximately 1 in 3 saying they're quite knowledgeable about insurance. However, even amongst planners, 1 in 3, insurance knowledge is still relatively low overall. This slide shows us what proportion of our members are insured across the 3 different types of insurances that we offer via superannuation. Again, due to confidentiality, I've removed the numbers from this chart. However, as you can see, the builder segment, which is the middle blue bar, has the highest level of insurance coverage across all our members. And this is not surprising. As I've mentioned a couple of times now, this is the life stage where people are forming families, and having dependents triggers many of our members to ensure that their families are protected should something happen to them. At Australian Super, we track the Net Promoter Score amongst members. A Net Promoter Score is a customer satisfaction benchmark that tells us how likely a member is to recommend us to someone. This helps us evaluate and improve customer experience across the fund. And as we can see here, retirees have the highest NPS score. And in fact, NPS increases as members get older. And as we've seen over the last 10 slides or so, The older life stage segments are also more aware, knowledgeable, and likely to interact with the fund, which really highlights that as members get older or as balances get bigger and members become more engaged with their super, they increasingly become more satisfied with their fund and therefore are more likely to recommend us to family and friends. It also shows us why engagement with our members is so important, as it can impact customer satisfaction and overall engagement between members and their superannuation accounts. So as we've seen over the past few slides, different segments of our member base behave differently, and this was no different when it came to the early release scheme from earlier this year. This slide here shows us the early release take-up for the first release. That is, it doesn't include the second or current withdrawal release that they've been allowed. This is from the first wave in March. What we found was that nearly 1 in 4 males in their 30s received an early release payment. The members who took a payment skewed younger, they skewed to males, and they were more among our members that had lower balances. We also found about half our members were in New South Wales or Victoria and employed in industries like manufacturing or admin support services. And finally, we've been able to look at your members and compare some of the insights for them. I'm sure it's no surprise to you that your members skew to the older life stages, with almost 2 in 3 being in that planner segment. However, what I found was interesting is that your members are relatively engaged to their super. They're highly insured across all 3 types of insurances offered, and almost 2 in 3 have registered for an online service, and almost half of them logged in last financial year, which is fantastic. And almost half of them also called the contact centre. However, only 14% have made an investment choice with their money invested in high growth cash and other less risky options if they had made a choice and switched their money. But not making a choice is not necessarily a bad thing. We find that for most members, being in the balanced option where you're defaulted is often the right thing. As a fund and as an industry, we want there to be a good balance between being engaged and understanding how your super works, but not so far to the extent that you start making decisions with your super and switching to cash, for example, which we found with other members at the time of the market downturn in March, where they switch to cash and they try to time the market, which more often than not leads to poorer financial outcomes and less money in retirement. So thanks for having me today to take you through some insights about superannuation members and their behaviours and actions. If you've got any questions, I think I have, no, I don't. I think I'm about 2 minutes over, but I'm sure Julia will let me answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Ash. That was always good to have data telling a story and vice versa. Ash, while we still have you, the only comment that's come in is from Rachel, who's coming up next, which is a nice segue into her session as well. Probably more just a comment. It would be interesting to see over time, that, especially with the 100-year life, whether those age ranges of those segments will change. So I don't know if you've got any initial comments on that in terms of where you see some of the growth in terms of age numbers.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just the way that we internally segment our members, and I'm sure we can change that in the future, but typically we do that so that we can look at our member base with different perspectives.
Terrific. Thanks, Ash. One question from Anna here, which will go, don't worry, Rachel, we'll make up some time for you. How does, so the question here from Anna is, how does Australian Super respond to the community trend to invest ethically?
So we actually have our entire team dedicated to ethical and social governance within our investments department, who oversee most of our investments, or all of our investments at the fund. And then we also offer a socially aware investment option. So most people get defaulted into the balanced option. And then we have 11 other investment options, one of which is socially aware, which is screened in particular for certain types of investments that they won't include in their portfolio.
Cool. Thank you. I know that you have to dash, Ash, but thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you for those comments too in the chat box as well, of which we can all scroll back to. So, Ash, thank you again. We look forward to welcoming you to Women on Board in the future as well, and enjoy the rest of your Friday.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. All right, segueing nicely now, we continue our journey on the age difference, and I'm delighted to introduce Rachel Palmer from Transitioning Well. Rachel is an organisational psychologist who passionately believes the world will be a better place when everyone can access good work that is good for their well-being. For 20 years, she has supported organisations to create environments that encourage productivity and protect people's mental health, and she has worked with leaders to proactively manage change and helped individuals navigate workplace transitions, and I'm sure she's been incredibly busy this year. Rachel is now with Transitioning Well, delivering the Ageing Workforce Project, which is many of you may have heard about and certainly been involved in. So in this session, and Rachel, I hope I'm not taking too much of your thunder away from you, she'll do a number of things, and one of the things that I'm interested in is about debunking myths about mature age workers, discuss what a workforce ageing ready looks like, present emerging themes and insights from the Ageing Workforce Ready project and what that means for our industry and how Ageing Workforce Ready is for our company. Rachel too has got a PowerPoint presentation to share with us, and there'll be another breakout room experience during this session, of which you all have now mastered. In the chat box, I'll pop up some details about the project that Rachel is involved in, and also too, Rachel has made her presentation available today in a PDF format, which will be available after the event. So, Rachel, over to you, and a very warm welcome from us.
Thanks very much, Julia, and thank you for that warm introduction. It's really exciting. I've actually been really looking forward to this event. Slightly disappointed that it's online, but we'll make the most of it, and there's always next time. So before I get into sort of all those things that now I'm ticking them off, Julia set those expectations, but I think I can meet them. I want to just, I guess, share a little bit more about myself and I suppose a story about why I'm here doing this. Those chats, the comments that people put in the chats after the breakout, a lot of them really resonated with me. This idea that age is actually meaningless. I mean, that's one of the things I found fascinating as I think more about this and get really involved in the Ageing Workforce project. Is age is a demographic, and it doesn't really tell us much at all. It really is a cultural kind of idea, and a lot of what is wrapped up with age is actually just culture. So I'm really more interested in life experiences and what we learn and how that really influences who we are, how we deal with transitions and get better and learn and all that stuff over time. And I, as well as the Ageing Workforce Project, I work for Transitioning Well, and transitions is something that is so important. And one of my early transitions, I think one that was really formative for me, was when I moved from England to Australia as a 12-year-old with my family. I still remember sitting at the dining room table in the northeast of England, and Dad told us that we were emigrating to Australia. I cheered and my sister burst into tears. And I think that really sums up transition. I mean, transition is both exciting and terrifying. And certainly moving to Australia, it was great and it was tough. There's a lot more opportunity on the New South Wales coast and the beautiful beaches than there is in a mining village in the northeast of England, where my dad used to say, anyone with any get up and go had got up and gone. And it was tough as well. I mean, teenage girls can be pretty cruel, and I was certainly teased about my Geordie accent. Obviously, I had it teased out of me altogether. And just having to, learn how to fit in, find new friends. And through all of that, I learned a lot about transition. I learned that, a mentor is absolutely crucial. I learned that, I did have close friends, that teased me good-naturedly, that weren't mean to me. In hindsight, I tried different resilience sort of and coping strategies. I don't think I realized that was what I was doing at the time, but you know, over time I've realized, yeah, that they're things that do work for me, and I've experimented with those and used those, you know, in challenging times like this year. So with all of that, I now work as an organizational psychologist, supporting others to navigate transitions. And one thing that I love to do is, you know, to help people, you know, find those moments. One of the things I do miss from England is my gran. My gran's a very wise woman. And one thing that she said is life's made up of moments, not days. And what I love is to help people find those moments, to get those insights, to work out what they already know and can, you know, rely on to take them forward. So hopefully that's my goal for today. Hopefully there's a moment in here for you and that little bit of insight that you can take out of today. So I'm conscious today, we do have a huge diversity of people in the room. It actually would be nice at some stage for us all to turn on our cameras and just to have a look at who's in the room. So maybe we can do that later, Julia. But I've basically, because of that, I've divided my presentation into two sections. In the first half, I'll be talking more about the individual. And then in the second half, more about the Aging Workforce Ready project and the insights, you know, for employers and organisations. The overarching theme is aging workforce, and look, I know it's relevant. You know, I've been working now with the participating bus companies for over a year and a half now, and I've met quite a few people from those companies. The Australian Government Job Outlook site says that the average age in the bus industry is 55 years, and the World Health Organization defines an older worker as anyone who's 45 plus. So we have an aging workforce in the bus industry. If you've suddenly realized that you're an older worker, just hang in there. Don't leave, please. It's all good. Okay, so to kick off, I'm going to start with some stats. More stats, sorry, for those who've just sat through Ash's stats, and now we have some more stats, but they tell a story, and I think they tell a really important story about women over the last 6 months. I mean, I think women have had it tough over the last 6 months. There's actually been a lot of commentary that has talked about, you know, that COVID and the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on women. Be interesting to see what happens going forward. I've read an article recently that says going forward it's going to be a lot of those traditionally male industries that are more impacted. So look, we'll watch this space. But if you're a woman and you're feeling a bit exhausted, you know, this could be why. We've been caring for our kids often, and often without any outside help. I know I'm a mum. I have a grade 1 son and a daughter in daycare, and you know, for term 3, they were home. I couldn't rely on family. I couldn't rely on daycare, and it was hard work. More than half the job losses were those held by women. So we've been impacted more by unemployment. This is a US stat, but in the US, at least 1/3 of women are in essential jobs. So, you know, they've been working, they've been looking after kids, and they are often at greater risk of coming into contact with the virus. We're less financially secure than men. I don't actually remember Ash going over the gender differences in her. Maybe I zoned out at that moment, but yeah, women generally have lower bank superannuation balances. Yeah, when they come to retire. And sadly as well, we know there's been an escalation of violence against women during lockdown. And look, I don't have new stats, but homelessness of older women was increasing even before COVID. And I can't imagine, you know, that's got any better in the last 6 months. So it's no wonder really that, you know, we feel anxious and that life is hard work sometimes. And how about older people? How have older people fared during lockdown and over the last few months? Look, there's a lot of stereotypes. I'm going to go into stereotypes about older people a little more shortly. One stereotype that is positive and possibly true is the stereotype about greater resilience and more wisdom. And I think that comes across a little in these stats, you know, that while it's been tough, perhaps they have had those reserves to draw on. So many have increased or consolidated their confidence with technology. I'm not going to say much more about technology, but you know, what I find fascinating here is 46% said their confidence had not increased because they were already confident, you know, and that's busting that myth straight out of the water there. About a third reported that their mental health had deteriorated. They're coping better than younger people on the whole, but you know, that's still a pretty huge statistic. Many self-medicated with alcohol and smoking during the pandemic, although who didn't, but moving right along, the top right-hand corner there. I mean, that's the one that really stands out for me. And you know, a lot about, I think what has happened for older people in the last 6 months is that there's been this undercurrent, probably for a long time in our society, around ageism, but ageism is kind of still okay. I mean, it's not okay, but society, like, we're not allowed to, you know, be sexist. We're not allowed to, you know, be racist, but it's still okay to be ageist. And this sort of idea of, you know, too young to retire, but too old to be looking for work is so real. There's people that have lost their jobs, but they know that it's hard to get a job. And in fact, 1 in 10 organizations who've been interviewed have said that, you know, there is an age that they won't hire above, and that age is 50. So if you're over 50 and looking for work, you've got an uphill battle. And on the flip side, that there's people who wanted to retire. You know, I've spoken to a few this year that had plans to retire, but, you know, either their financial situation is now up in the air, or, you know, the bucket list of things they wanted to do, to travel, all that sort of thing, spend time with family, they just can't. And who knows, hopefully it's not a long-term situation, but right now, you know, people are choosing to stay at work if they have the option, you know, because they can't do what they wanted to do during retirement. Okay, so now that I've depressed you with the stats, what can we do? Well, I've got a couple of suggestions, and maybe something else has jumped out at you as I've been talking. Perhaps as a thought or an action that you'd like to pursue. But I'm a big fan of challenging assumptions and mindsets. Maybe that's why I'm a psychologist. But I think one thing that we can do is say no to ageism. While I'll focus on the older side of the spectrum, like, ageism is actually, you know, an issue across the spectrum for younger people as well. And I'll just give a short example. You know, a job might be advertised as requiring 10 years of experience. And that's actually ageist. I mean, you can imagine, you know, a 22-year-old who's had packed masses and masses into their first few years out of school or university, who's perfectly capable of doing that job. But by putting a number on it, it actually becomes an ageist job ad. So, you know, I'll talk more about ageism from the older spectrum, but I think saying no to ageism is so important. It's important for our mental health as well. With the stereotypes and the myths out there, it's so easy to internalize all that negative, you know, belief and to impact our own mental health. So don't believe in stereotypes. Enjoy the age you are. I think something else that we could possibly do is embrace these changing gender norms. You know, there has been increased flexibility in areas. There's been men increasing their caring responsibilities, especially when they've had particularly young children. So we've seen men step up, and the status of many women's jobs has increased as well. We put a lot more value in, you know, that frontline work. Even, you know, things like cleaning and stacking shelves have had a kudos that, you know, they've never had before, which is fantastic. So, you know, let's hold on to that moment and make it normal. So the next few slides, I'm going to expand on each of these and give some more sort of practical insights and ideas about what we can do and how we could do this. So in terms of saying no to ageism, the Aging Workforce Ready project has led a bit of a social media campaign. We've put these myths out on LinkedIn and Facebook and so on. And we're really trying to bust those myths about what it is to be an older worker. So as I go through these, I think about, which of these do you buy into? Which of these do you believe of yourself? And think about why and why these aren't true as well. So the first one, mature age workers cost the business more because employers have to pay more for their experience and also pay to replace them when they leave. Well, in fact, employing older workers boosts the economy. And that's good for business, more money in the economy, good for business. We're going to need that with a recession on our doorstep. And their job tenure is actually likely to be higher. So this idea that, older people are about to leave, not true. What about this one? Mature age workers are prone to health problems. Well, yes, to an extent. But younger people are too, and younger people get injured. People take sick leave for different reasons, and that's what the statistics, that's what the facts tell us. Pretty much all in all, it balances out. We take leave for different reasons, but it's much the same. If anything, older people take slightly less sick leave in reality. Older workers have lower performance and productivity. Well, cognitive decline is real, but it's a bit more complicated, than people generally believe or understand. In reality, unless we have a specific illness, our intelligence actually peaks around 60 to 70 years. And that's about that learning, that experience. It does stick in our brains and it makes a difference. So, you've got something to look forward to, or perhaps you're already there. And it's also, I find this statistic great as well, 60 to 70 years is the time that we're often the happiest. So, we can work well, we can be happy. And look, if you're not productive at work, it's probably to do with the work environment, not to do with your age. Older workers do not like or understand technology. No, don't get me started on this. I mentioned my gran before, I think. She's 94. She's on Facebook. I Zoom her. She's in England. I Zoom her every so often. Don't tell me that older people can't use technology. And we saw that statistic before, that even those that perhaps weren't confident have really stepped up and increased confidence. The reality is older workers, older people, they have smartphones and they know how to use them. And the last one, older workers are counting down to retirement. Well, possibly, but retirement age actually isn't 60, 65. Most people are expecting to retire older than that, older than 65. And also, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, I think it's at least my research and experience is showing it's common in the bus industry, this idea of unretiring. So people, they unretire for all sorts of reasons. They finish up at work, they get the handshake, they have the farewell party, and then, a few months, a year later, and they're either bored or, maybe fed up with the partner at home or running out of money and come back to work. So yeah, it's not a question of counting down the days. So that's some food for thought about ageism and saying no to ageism. What about changing gender norms? It's not easy. And if it was easy, we'd have done it by now. And there's all sorts of, I guess, routes to doing this and chipping away at it. I'd like to introduce this idea of boundaries. Transitioning well, we think that boundaries are a really important step in changing gender norms. So for example, you might have noticed that it was pretty awesome during lockdown that your husband or partner or significant other, organised dinner a few more times a week, perhaps. And you'd like this to continue. So what do? Well, first, you need to give yourself permission. Again, big stereotype, but I think there's some truth in this one, that as women, we're pretty good at telling ourselves that we shouldn't impose on others, that our needs and wants don't matter enough. You know, it can be really hard to give yourself permission to even contemplate a new division of labour in the household. It goes against, you know, years of self-talk. It goes against, you know, how we were brought up, the expectations in our family. So take time, be easy on yourself, do some reflection, you know, think about, you know, where is this idea coming from for you personally? What's stopping you asking for what you need? Number 2, build a lighthouse. So, you know, we all know a lighthouse guides boats safely through the rocks, and our personal lighthouse does the same for us. It's those values that guide us safely, you know, through tough times in life. So work out what is most important to you in terms of keeping you safe, keeping you sane, you know, keeping you happy. And then, you know, once you've got those 2 sorted, draw your line in the sand. And notice I use the singular, 1 line, maybe 2, but no, we're not talking about tens of boundaries here. That's far too complicated and ambitious. Just think about what are those 1, perhaps 2 things that are so important to you, and what you want to ask for. What is your new boundary? Is it that you want your husband or partner to organise dinner more often? Or is it that you're going to exercise or meditate, you know, a few times a week, and you need to be out of bounds to your family, to your kids, to your workplace at those times? So what's your line in the sand? What are you going to ask for? And then the last one, I was going to say the hardest, it's probably not, these are all, it's not, none of this is easy, like I said, but have the conversation. Telepathy isn't a thing. Believe me, my job would be a heck of a lot easier if we had telepathy, but people aren't mind readers, so you need to have the conversation. And often that is an uncomfortable conversation, but as we say at Transitioning Well, it's better to choose discomfort over resentment. It's better to choose discomfort over resentment. So discuss your new priorities, have a gentle conversation, plan it out, work out, you know, how can you approach this in a way that is about curiosity, about possibility, not about, you know, blame. Okay. I think I've talked enough for now. We're going to move into breakout rooms. There's a couple of questions there that I've posed. How can you say no to ageism? And what's your new gender norm boundary? Look, if that's a bit too heavy for a Friday morning, feel free to, you know, discuss what other insights and what else has struck you in this conference so far. But if you want to tackle those, I've put those questions on the table as well. So I think now is it Lisa's going to work her magic and send us into our breakout rooms. Well, I hope you had some good conversation, and perhaps that's something you can pick up with friends, colleagues, others later. And if there's something that you'd like to share or feel comfortable sharing, please stick it in the chat. I'm sure there's so much experience and wisdom in this virtual room that we can all share from. So please do put your comments into the chat. Okay, so we're shifting gears now, talking about Ageing Workforce Ready project. So the Ageing Workforce Ready project is looking to really make a difference to the mental health and wellbeing of Victorian workers, with funding received from WorkSafe Victoria's Work Well Mental Health Improvement Fund. Seems like it doesn't matter how often I say that, it's still such a mouthful. The Work Well Mental Health Improvement Fund. So it's a collaboration between public transport companies, Australian Super and Transitioning Well. And together we're, you know, developing and expanding and building a bunch of initiatives that we want to test within our pilot organisations to see, you know, what can we do better to engage and support older workers. We're 18 months into the project, and we've completed phases 1 and 2 that you see on the screen there. With the evidence base, some of what I collected and what the project developed in that evidence base, I've already presented on. So that informs, you know, those myths and some of the other things that I've mentioned already today. And the assessment. So the assessment, we've compiled some insights from the MPI, the Maturity of Practice Index, and that's what I want to share with you today. So organisations, they can find it hard to know where to start when it comes to, you know, what makes an ageing workforce ready organisation. And so as the project and as transitioning well, we've pulled together, you know, this framework to help people kind of get a grip on the area and sort of understand how to get started. The first pillar in this framework is the roadmap. And so that's the roadmap that organisations use to guide and adapt their approach to supporting older workers. In other words, it might be the influence of strategy or culture, leadership. You know, how does all of that come together? How does an organisation use its metrics to really understand its workforce and the older workforce? And then, you know, once an organisation's kind of got a grip on the roadmap, it can go into review, you know, how well it's doing in these other pillars: recruitment, retention, and retirement. So recruitment is the policy and practices and hiring outcomes around, you know, hiring and bringing older people into the organisation, and also, you know, promoting people internally as well, giving them those internal opportunities. Retention is probably the meatiest one, and that's all the, you know, amazing and diverse things that an organisation can do to ensure that older people feel supported and productive and mentally healthy. And then retirement. So that's about the mechanisms that support a smooth transition to retirement. And that takes in both the perspective of the individual. So how do they transition, you know, into a mentally healthy or fulfilling retirement, but also leave behind, you know, that amazing organizational knowledge and you know, support the organization so that there isn't a big hole where they were after they leave. So in the assessment phase, we conducted a number of focus groups and interviews with 7 bus companies who are our industry partners for this project. And from these, we were able to establish some themes across each of these pillars. And so what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of a snapshot. I'm not going to name any of the organisations and not dobbing anyone in for, you know, the good or the bad. But I'll just go through each of these pillars and share, you know, some of the insights that we saw from the project's perspective during the Maturity of Practice Index, that MPI takeaway. So roadmap, and to be honest, you know, not great in the roadmap, but, you know, I don't think a lot of organisations are. I think this sort of relates to what I was talking before about ageism and you know, the fact that even organisations that have a diversity and inclusion strategy, and not all do, only 8%, this is something PwC found, only 8% include age. So look, it's not a big area yet, and needs to be, and a lot of, you know, companies, I think, are weak in terms of their roadmap for older people. So I think there is a big opportunity here for bus companies to be more strategic in how they support. And I think it's a bit different for bus companies because the average age is older. I think I saw a lot of great things going on, but a lot of it was tactical, not strategic, and not based on metrics or a really sort of, you know, statistical understanding of the business. So big opportunity there. Recruitment as well. I saw, you know, some great stuff going on, but a lot of it was tactical, not strategic, because it is an industry, I think everyone would agree, that is really attractive to older people. I mean, after all, the average age is 55. You know, a lot of stuff just gets done right in this area just because. The main issue we picked up here was around fitness for work, and there was a concern that you know, companies weren't terribly or necessarily confident that they had, you know, enough in place to ensure that the people hired were fit for work. Retention, as I said, this is the meatiest of the pillars. There's a lot going on here, so I'm not going to read out all of those dot points there. And I suppose just to emphasize, when I talk about retention, I'm not talking about people staying in the job and staying until retirement. I don't think that's an issue. If anything, you've got employees that perhaps outstay their welcome and should retire before they actually do. But this is about keeping people productive and safe and mentally healthy, you know, as they work and as they become older in the job. So a few things I'm going to just hone in on this topic. One strength that really jumped out at me was flexibility, and I suppose I was a bit surprised. I mean, it's shift work, you know, and I was actually like pleasantly surprised by how much flexibility was incorporated, you know, even within those shift work constraints. So some good examples were the use of casual positions, a few part-time. I think part-time rosters is a challenge, but lifestyle rosters seem to be really appreciated where it was impossible to introduce those, and allowing people sort of time, ad hoc time off to go to appointments, for example. I mean, that's a big deal for older workers. And I know that, you know, shifts are often, you know, settled or decided a long time in advance, and it can be hard to accommodate last minute changes. But I saw a lot of goodwill and a lot of effort to accommodate those changes. Another strength that I observed was mentoring. I think a lot of it was informal, but nevertheless, there were great examples of, you know, buddying up people with new starters to show them the ropes, or informal mentoring, you know, when someone started doing a route for the first time. Perhaps more could be done with the two-way mentoring. Perhaps there's an opportunity for some of the younger people to mentor older people as well. And the research shows us that that's actually really valuable where it can be done. Perhaps the biggest issue I noticed was, again, in relation to fitness for work. I think companies are coming from a good place, but really grappling with how to be proactive in this area without being discriminatory. And it seemed to me that in some cases, at least, more could be done to make adjustments so that someone can work in a role for longer. I mean, reviewing job design can be a way to do this, but I know reviewing job design, like that's big. But, you know, those job crafting or, you know, reasonable adjustments can be another way that helps people stay working in a role for longer. And some of the examples, one of the companies I spoke to is grappling with how to bring in some sort of assessment, but isn't sure how to do that. Do you sort of introduce it at a particular age, or, you know, how do you do this in a way that's fair? A common story, you know, was the one, I heard this across multiple organizations, you know, where, you know, there's a few more scratches on a bus, or, you know, you sort of see something, you're like, oh, you know, that bus shouldn't be driving on that side of the road. So, you know, it's let slip until it actually becomes a performance management issue. And then someone's performance managed out of the organization rather than being able to, you know, address it sooner and proactively. So these are some of the scenarios that I'm hoping that the project, or at least the project's, you know, intending to work with the organisations to grapple with. I mean, a good story that I heard was about, well, effectively it's a story about job design, where they did support an older driver who, I can't remember, I think he was in his late 60s, maybe even in his 70s, and, you know, he couldn't do the longer routes anymore. So they made sure he was only rostered on shorter routes, and found, you know, other tasks for him to do around the depot that were safe and good for him. So I know that's not always possible, but I thought that was a great example. And then the last pillar, retirement. So I heard a lot of enthusiasm from managers and from employees about having access to training and resources to help people transition into retirement. There was a bit of concern about that sort of personal boundary thing. People were very conscious of, you know, retirement's a personal thing and work's a work thing, so I don't want to cross that boundary. But I think there's room. I think there is more that, you know, most organisations can do before they cross that boundary into what is actually a personal matter. Casual work, very common way to ramp down to retirement, and that's great. A lot of people, employees and drivers, you know, really love that casual work and the flexibility that just gave them to ramp down to retirement. And as I mentioned, unretirement as well was generally welcomed, you know, by the bus companies, provided the driver was a good one, you know, had to earn the right to unretire. But yeah, often that was absolutely a win-win, that the driver could come back, and that was good for the business as well. So in conclusion, what can organisations do? A lot, really. You can wait, keep an eye on the website and see what we come up with as part of the Ageing Workforce Ready project. We intend to create, you know, training and resources and templates and other bits and pieces. BusVic will be, you know, distributing some of it, and others of it will be available through the website, and much of it will be available at no cost. Some other things that you can do if you don't want to wait another 6 or 12 months is think about what is the issue. If you're a manager or an owner of a bus company, what's playing on your mind around your ageing workforce? Is it that you think there are particular individuals that need some support, in which case, you know, retirement coaching is becoming more of a thing. There's certainly something Transitioning Well does, and other companies do too, to really help support individuals who perhaps need to retire, want to retire, but can't quite, you know, set that retirement date, or perhaps are having other challenges in their late career and into retirement. You can conduct your own MPI assessment, Maturity of Practice Index assessment. I mean, that's something that, you know, I can help you with, or we're working on a sort of a quick tool as well. That's another resource that we're working on, that so you can kind of do that quick index and get a flavour for how you're going. Just looking at your workforce demographics, you know, dig out that HR database, or, you know, the spreadsheet, and have a look at who's working for you from that sort of that demographic perspective. You might be surprised. If you want to focus on that retention pillar, perhaps think about building on the strengths. Can you build on your strengths of flexibility or mentoring? Is there something that you want to fix around fitness for work, or other aspects of keeping people safe and productive and healthy at work? And then, you know, the retirement pillar. What can you do now? Are there things that you can do to more formally support people into retirement? And like I said, there will be more resources available and manager training that we're building as part of the project that can support that as well. So that's me. If you want to get in touch, the details, not the picture on the right. But I think, Julia, do we have time for some questions, or?
Let's take 2 questions. So if you've got any questions for Rachel, ladies and gentlemen, just pop them in the chat box, or any comments or observations, and we will cherry pick some of those. So go to the chat box.
Or everyone's just busting for a cup of tea and a break.
Maybe they might be busting for a cup of tea and a break. We got nothing. We got silence, which means their minds have been blown, Rachel. So what we may do at this point, we are going to take a break, but I'll come back to that. Rachel, thank you so much for taking us through that journey, especially around the Ageing Workforce Ready project and how that's been playing out. Felicity's just said no questions, but very interesting to listen to. So thank you, Felicity, for your comments there. As I mentioned earlier, Rachel's presentation will be available as a PDF. And we'll circulate that around potentially next week as well, so you've got those details on hand. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us today from the basement in North Melbourne, as you referred it to. also too, so what we are going to do now is have a break. We're coming back at 11 o'clock sharp. So time to grab a cuppa. I really encourage you to move your bodies, get away from whatever device or wherever you are. And also to use this opportunity to just note in the chat box any of the kind of key learnings and key comments that came out of your the breakout room discussion on ageism and the gender norm boundaries. So at this point, you can stay here, you can log out and then log back in, but we'll see you and we'll commence again at 11 o'clock with Anna hosting a panel discussion on millennials in the future workforce. Okay, see you at 11. All right. Here we go, welcome back. And this is our final session for today's event, and it's a discussion on millennials and the future workforce. So joining us today is Chelsea Robbins, a fourth generation family member of the Dyson Group of companies. And I just want to do a huge shout out to the Dyson people that have joined us today. You certainly are a massive posse. Chelsea's worked with the business now for almost 4 years, and she's currently working in the payroll department and has studied a Bachelor of Management and has completed her Masters in Communication in 2019. Welcome, Chelsea. Also too, we give a warm welcome to Jack Flood, another fourth generation family member working in the business from Flood's Bus Lines, which operates 15 buses with 17 staff, which includes him and Dad. And Jack has been the duty manager since 2016. Leading proceedings today is Anna Tybin. She's the General Manager for Latrobe Valley Bus Lines. She's also too a fellow BusVic board member and President of Latrobe Women in Business. In 2012, Anna was awarded overall best performance from the Monash University Engineering Institute of Transport. Her passion for creating a learning culture within her organisation and industry, including attracting, developing and supporting talent and diversity, is kind of, she'll share more of this and certainly kind of draw on this in terms of the focus and the format for this panel discussion. So again, please do note any questions or comments in the chat box, even from Rachel's session or some questions that you want to pose to this panel today. But at this point, Anna, I'm handing over to you. Welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julia, and thanks to Ash and Rachel. It was a really informative session this morning, but I'm very much looking forward to now pulling on some of that information and having a chat with Chelsea and Jack. Before we start, I just would like to do a welcome to country. So I'm broadcasting today from the Gunai-Kurnai, the lands of the Gunai-Kurnai people, and wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners. Would also like to pay our respects to the elders past and present and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be joining us today. And also just like to note and acknowledge that this week is NAIDOC week and it is themed, always was, always will be. So maybe if people are online and they can put where they're broadcasting from in terms of the Aboriginal lands, that would be great in the chat section. So millennials are born 1981 to 1994 or up to 1996, and millennials are also called Gen Yers. So I'm going to start, and I did just earlier put a quick link into the chat box and make reference to a Deloitte Global Millennial Survey, which was conducted this year in 2020. And there's some great news in there, and it's going to generate some of the questions that we're talking to Chelsea and Jack about today. So millennials and Gen Zs expressed a resolve to build a better future during this Deloitte survey. They were committed to people ahead of profit and prioritising environment, sustainability, diversity, inclusion, and income equity. They're resilient and determined to shape a better future. And the overall results from the survey were that they had a greater optimism about the environment, a strong commitment to financial responsibility, and saving a favourable new world and new environment. So there's a lot of expectation on the shoulders of Chelsea and Jack representing millennials today. So we're going to start with Chelsea. And what I'm interested in finding out from you at the moment, Chelsea, is what sort of positives have you experienced this year during COVID?
I think the biggest thing that happened with me personally during COVID was it forced me to stop and slow down a little bit and gave me time to reflect and reassess on where I'm at and what I want to do and what my plan is moving forward. Up till now, it'd been go, 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 just one thing after the other. And then, yeah, being told, no, you can't do anything, you can't leave home, you just have to stay there. Yeah, really kind of forced. And I think that it's important to do personally and from a business perspective too, is to stop and have that time to reflect and reassess and see where you're at and where you want to go.
That's a great answer. You're right. We do tend to get a bit micro, don't we? We look at the smaller things sometimes, so we're not sort of bringing ourselves out to focus on some of the bigger picture things. So slowing down and stepping back is a common theme I've heard from a lot of people. So that's great to hear that from you. Thanks, Chelsea. Jack, what about you? So what have you found that are positives or that you've experienced that's been positive this year in COVID?
Yeah, well, for me, a huge positive has been, I mean, as we were saying, we're a pretty small staff, just watching everyone come together. It's really good to see people sort of step up their responsibilities, be really understanding of what everyone's going through. Yeah, it's been really lovely to see amongst people that you used but not heaps, to really see them bond together and take it on their shoulders. It's been great.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that's similar to what David said at the introduction with Volvo, that they've really been focusing on supporting their team and supporting the workplace and the resilience. So again, that's really good to see that that's transitioning through. So we're getting into some of the tough questions now. That was an easy question, by the way. So we're jumping into the tough questions. And what I'm interested to know from you, Jack, is a little bit more about your views on the environment. So if we have a look at the Deloitte study, there's a priority on environmental impacts for millennials, especially across the last 12 months. And we've seen some considerable reduction across the world in pollutions and things like that. And I think it's given us a really good opportunity to see a different world and a different environment and how things could look different. So I'm interested specifically in how much focus or emphasis you place on environmental sustainability. And the second part of that question is, how would you like to see that emphasis translate across the bus industry?
Yeah, that is a great question. As a millennial, I feel like there's kind of an expectation amongst the younger generation to really, really to be accountable for these environmental issues. I mean, I know when I talk to other friends, let's say, that are in different industries, I don't know, I like to talk up that, we're a pretty environmental friendly industry. I mean, running buses, we're cutting back on everything.
Yeah.
And I think, there is a bit of a pressure for us to start shaping the industry to go in a more environmentally friendly way.
So when you say environmentally friendly way, what do you think that looks like? Do you think that looks like transitioning bus technology or transitioning depot technology, or how do you see that playing out at Floods in Bendigo?
I mean, you definitely got to start somewhere, whether it's something little like reusable water when washing and cleaning buses, to outfitting the depot with solar panels. I think for us, we're still quite a way away from anything big like battery powered buses. Just the nature of our work, that's still a way away. But I mean, it is interesting to see stuff coming out of Germany, hydrogen buses, battery powered buses for town and track work. I just think because we're primarily school based, it's still a way off for us.
It is really interesting, though, to see that technology. It's actually quite overwhelming to see how quickly that's moving at the moment, which is very interesting. Well, you'll be very pleased to know that millennials, 65% of millennials have increased their efforts to recycle, which is fantastic. Reduce the use of single plastic bags, and there's a 58% increase in the use of public transport or push bikes. So all good news there. Chelsea, how do you see this? What's your opinion of the environment, and what's your priority on the environment and sustainability, and how do you see this moving through the bus industry?
I obviously think it's very important, particularly given the industry we are in. I think that we can often get too focused on electric buses or the big technology that's going to be a massive change in the industry, which is, it's going to happen. It's like, it is going to happen. It's inevitable. But I think that as an industry, we can do better on some of the smaller things, like Jack touched on, like more energy efficient depots, or paperless offices. All of those things kind of get lost and not spoken about as much, because there is such a big focus on the next big thing with bus technology. And I think that that is important, and it's just as important as the bigger stuff, all of the little things.
Agree. I think paperless offices, changing the lights, as Jack said, recycling water and solar panels, they're all significant things that every business can make a change at doing and introduce slowly across time. So they're great answers. I'm interested, and I'm moving this in a slightly different direction now, but it's relevant to the environmental conversation that we're having. How does this play out within your business at Dyson's in terms of the differences in generations? You're, as Julia said, fourth generation at Dyson's, which is fantastic and an amazing achievement for Dyson's and both floods. Amazing achievement at that level of generational change. So how do you see these conversations moving across your boardroom, and what are some of the generational differences that you see playing out in the boardroom?
Well, particularly with the environment, I think that it wasn't as known about the impact that certain actions have on the environment, in the third generation when they were my age, for example. So it wasn't as probably not as prominent in their decision making when doing things, whereas now it's one of the major considerations when you're deciding, or say you're going to build a new depot. That should be a big consideration, how environmentally friendly it is. So that's probably one of the biggest things, and that's just because we've got more knowledge and more information on how those things have changed, and we are more informed about that stuff. So yeah, that's in particular to the environment. So I think that those things come across pretty well, in a boardroom discussion or an executive discussion, because everyone is informed of it now. So yeah, I don't think there's many issues with that at that level between generations.
Do you see is it obvious that there's a greater emphasis on it as the generations change?
I think it comes to mind for us millennials first, and then maybe as a secondary or thought to the older generations. I think it's definitely, we would consider it first. It would be one of the first things.
Which is really interesting. Do you think, Jack, following on from what Chelsea's talking about, we were talking earlier based on Rachel's conversation about ageing workforce in relation to attracting younger generation into the bus industry. Do you think technology and environment and things like that has anything to do with, or could accelerate our rate of attracting a younger generation into the bus industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any young person in 2020 is going to want to jump into an archaic business that's still using, you know, that doesn't care about the environment, that's not making positive steps forward. So yeah, there's a big attraction with technology. I mean, the rate that technology has advanced in my 28 years is insane. So to think what it's going to be in another 25 years, I think, yeah, it's a really good incentive getting young people into what was maybe an industry that was, you know, a little bit more on the archaic side. But those days are definitely gone, I think.
So you're a mechanical engineer by trade from RMIT, is that right?
I did go to RMIT for mechanical engineering, but I didn't actually complete the course. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. We'll just erase that section. So you studied mechanical engineering. What is interesting about some of these new technologies, and I'm keen to get your perspective on this, is that it seems to change the role that we offer. So, for example, diesel technicians, you know, when they're handling potentially hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles, well, the diesel technician really has to be retrained. So we're looking at a new generation of roles within our companies too moving forward. How do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really creeping up quicker than you think as well. I mean, I was talking to our mechanics yesterday, and they were changing out, I think, the last shackle pins on one of our old spare buses. And I said to them, you should really enjoy this part, because, I mean, going forward, most of our buses are on 12 monthly services. They're all new Euro 5 emission stuff. So it's completely different to what they trained to be working on. And like you were saying, with hydrogen and battery power coming, you can't just have diesel technicians working on that kind of science. They're definitely going to need to be retrained. And if not, new people are going to need to be brought in.
Absolutely. It is very interesting. Chelsea, going back to you and staying with our theme in and around generational change, I'm really interested in having a quick conversation with you about some of the exciting things that Dyson's do to integrate some of the fourth generations into your management, into the management decisions.
Yeah. So probably the biggest thing is that we have a monthly it's called 4G meeting. So all of the fourth generation that work within the business, whether it's casually as a driver or as an on-road supervisor, or if they're full-time management, we all meet every month, and we talk about all different things, about the business, about personal development, about just a catch up sometimes, whatever we need to talk about. And we also rotate as a guest invitee to both the executive meetings and the board meetings. And that person then comes back to our fourth generation meeting and reports on what's happening within the business at what's discussed at both those levels.
I think that's a fantastic idea. What sort of things do you see implementing as a result of those sort of discussions that you have?
Well, we've recently just restructured it, actually. So it started out as a kind of a way to get to know everyone. As it's the fourth generation now, we span across a few families now. We're not first cousins or brothers and sisters anymore. There's a few more of us. So a lot of people, when they first start working at the business, don't necessarily know. I remember when I started, I was like, I don't know who I'm actually related to and who I'm not. So so the initial purpose of the meeting was for us at that generation to all know each other and have that catch up. And now it's kind of progressed, because that started probably 6 years ago. And now it's progressed, and we've just restructured it to be a bit more, have a bit of a different purpose. So align more with the business, what the business wants, and hopefully have a bit more of a voice in some decisions, and be able to discuss things and then report back to the exec and the board on what we think the business should do, for example, on important business things.
I think that's a fantastic idea. It's a great idea to understand how that change comes into play across a multi-generational business. And it's a great idea to ensure that every generation feels valued and has a role in the company. So well done. That's fantastic to hear about. I'm interested in hearing your views on leadership and just exploring that for a little bit of time. This probably won't come as any surprise to you, but overall, millennials don't really believe political leaders have a particular impact on the world today. And we won't even talk about religious leaders and how millennials view them, because the stats go right down there as well. So in terms of leadership, I'm interested in what you think are the important qualities of a good leader. And if you can give me an example or a couple of examples of strong leaders and why. So we'll throw this one across to you to start with, Jack.
Yep. All right. First of all, I think communication is just the most important thing. Just having a leader, a mentor, someone that you're working with that you can talk to, you can bring up issues with at ease, is fundamentally just a great trait to have. So yeah, I think that's really important.
What about who are a couple of people that you would like to model your leadership style on, or that you see as a mentor? Would that be someone in the business itself or externally?
I'll go for two examples. I'll start off with well, you just said then we give them a bit of a hard rap, politicians, but I think let's do it. Dan Andrews, what he's overcome this last 6 months. It started out a bit rocky, I'll give him that, but yeah, it's fantastic the result he's achieved. It's been a very hard time, and it's admirable to see the smile on his face at the end of it. So
Jack, you're a very brave man, but well done. Thank you for raising that.
No, that's all right. And look, it is a bit of a cliche. There's not really any other leaders in our business other than my father, but it has been awesome to see the way he's handled the last 20 or so years. Through, I mean, a BOV did a lot of it, but contract negotiations really took a toll on him. Like it's a lot when you invest your entire life in a business. And yeah, it's been really inspirational the way he's developed a new depot, taken on more roles than he should have. It's it's awesome.
Do you think that as you've become more established in the business and as you've got older, you've appreciated the role of your dad a little more?
Yeah, I was very naive growing up to what he was actually doing. I still don't know how he did a lot of what he did. He sort of started out similar to me, driving, mechanic, and then took on a more leadership role. And to think all the years that he was doing it solo, the period in between when his father was running it and when I joined professionally, it's, credit to him.
So you've mentioned we've gone down the rabbit hole of politics. We won't stay there very long because we'll get lost very quickly, and we'll probably get a few people disconnect if we go down that rabbit hole too far. But I'm interested in your view on, do you think that the leadership that you've seen across the political sphere this year has been positive, has been better, has encouraged you more? What have you seen from your perspective in terms of leadership across our state and nation?
Kind of embarrassingly, I've never really taken that much of an interest in politics. I mean, certainly the transport side of it. I mean, being from Bendigo, when Jacinda Ardern was Transport Minister, it's a shame that it sort of took a global pandemic to get me to pay attention to things. And I know it wasn't all smooth sailing, but I think on a whole, it's been a positive. I'm probably fairly alone in saying that as a millennial, but yeah, no. Yeah.
Also, surprisingly, I don't think you are. The studies that have come out this year have indicated that millennials are far more involved and far more positive about this year than one would perhaps normally expect. So
Yeah.
your answer is fairly consistent with what we're seeing out there globally amongst millennials. So Chelsea, I'm going to get you to answer this tough question now. So leadership, what are important qualities to you in a good leader? And can you provide us one or a couple of examples of leaders that you find inspirational and why?
The one that really stands out for me is Jacinda Ardern. I think because most of the qualities I think are important in the leader she has, and she's a very good example of them. I like how genuine she is. She just comes across as a regular human like everyone else. And because of that, she's very relatable. And she also seems to have a lot of respect from not just New Zealanders, but across the world, which I think is really impressive. So I think that, yeah, respect, communication, like Jack said too, is very important, and trust as well. Trust in your team, and yeah, trust that they're going to do what they need to do, I think is important to get that respect too.
Great answer, and I'm a big fan of Jacinda Ardern's myself, and it's very interesting to see how she's managed not only the Christchurch shooting, but I think it was Christchurch shooting, the shooting in the mosque over there, but also the pandemic very successfully, and it's a real shift from the normal political leadership style that we see, isn't it?
Definitely.
So how do you think that transitions into Dyson's and a leadership style that you would like to see across the bus industry?
I think the biggest thing is that, trust in your team. As Dyson's gets bigger, I know that the managing directors need to have trust in their team to be able to get things done. If you don't have that, then you're a bit stuck because you can't do it all yourself. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and it's evident at Dyson's that they do have that trust and enable their managers and everything to have the ability to manage their own teams and manage their departments, and kind of empower them to do it instead of micromanage.
That's a great answer. Well done. Excellent. Just to put it into context a little bit, how many employees are over there at Dyson's at the moment?
I think it's over 1,000 now. Which is
a significant size, a significant company. So some of these strategies that you're talking about are difficult to maneuver when you get to that size. So well done. We're going to kick off with a couple of rapid fire questions, and they're really just questions that we want quick answers to. So we're going to start with a 1 to 5, 5 being the highest priority. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, if you can just rate them 1 to 5 in terms of how you see it playing out in your businesses and what's the highest priority. So the first one being diversity in the workforce. Jack, what's the answer there? 1 to 5.
4.
4. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Chelsea.
I was going to say 4 too.
So why would you say 4?
I think that, or at Dyson's, I think we do have diversity already, and we are pretty diverse in in some areas, not in all of them. I think we can definitely be better. But I also think it's important to continue to build on that and to expand on that too in the future.
And Jack, you've rated it as a 4, which is fantastic. How do you go about attracting diversity in a regional town such as Bendigo?
Yeah, it is obviously quite a bit more difficult being regional and also having such a smaller staff comparing to Dyson's. I mean, for us, it's just being honest with what the role is. Like we're happy to offer whatever we can to anyone, but yeah, the real issue for us is, like you said, being a rural town. It's we don't have the biggest pool to draw from.
Jack, we have, I think I've got someone else online that perhaps needs to turn their computer onto, yeah, anyway, we'll keep going. Sorry, Jack. Sorry to cut you. I think that cut you off there slightly. So we have the same problem here in Gippsland. The pool to draw from in relation to diversity is really tricky. So we'll keep going. So again, a 1 to 5 answer. Social capital or impacting in a positive way in your local community. So Jack, what's your priority there, 1 to 5?
It's a bit of a cop-out, but can I do 4 again?
Absolutely. There's no cop-outs here. You can do 4.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay, and why would you give that a 4?
Yes, it is very important to be engaged with the community. A lot of the other work we do, like small charter work, is through, you know, tiny public primary schools and stuff like that. And I think it's good to, you know, be able to provide that service for them. Yeah.
Fantastic answer. Chelsea, you knew that I was coming your way. So what's your 1 to 5 social capital impacting in a positive way in your local community?
I'm going to say 5.
Excellent.
I'm a massive believer in that. I think if you can, then you should, as much as you can, help others. I'm big on that one.
So just tell us a couple of projects that Dyson's do. You've probably got a huge list because I know Dyson's are very proactive in this space. So just a couple of projects that really impress you about what has been rolled out at Dyson's.
We've just done I wasn't on it, so I don't know all the details, but a rollout of a grants program that we've been people were able and groups were able to apply for grants, and if they fit the criteria, then we were able to give them a grant for sporting equipment or whatever that they needed for their organisation. We're also in the process of starting a family foundation, which is going to really focus on linked with Dyson's, but to what we can do and what we can offer in that space.
Fantastic. Some great things happening there. So financial performance. Let's go down this rabbit hole. Chelsea, what's your 1 to 5 on financial performance?
I feel like I have to say 5 because if you don't have it, you don't have a business. But maybe 4. I think it's obviously important because you need to be successful and make money to continue running. But I don't think that making money is the only thing a business can offer.
It's very interesting you say that because there's a real trend amongst the millennials that is people over profit. So that's coming through loud and clear. So throwing across to you, Jack, do you have a similar view on that? What's your 1 to 5 on financial performance?
Yeah, look, I think that's pretty spot on. I'll go 4. I think while of course you do have to be making money. That's why everyone works, of course. It's not the be all and end all. High, but not the highest. We'll go with that.
Fantastic. Providing a motivational and stimulating workplace. So Jack, I'll start off with you because you're in a smaller company. I think you've got around 15 employees at Floods. Is that right?
Yeah, about that. I think 17.
17. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it is important. I don't want to say 4 again, but I will.
Okay.
Look, yeah, you don't want to have a high turnover of staff, and keeping them engaged through, new opportunities, new things that they can progress into. A lot of our staff, 14 of them being drivers. They're primarily school drivers. school contract drivers. So for them to keep them engaged, you know, offering other opportunities, weekend work, anything that they're really interested in, accommodating them, and yeah.
What is one thing, weekend work you've mentioned, but what's one thing that you think attracts drivers to your workplace, that you, you know, how you retain drivers and create that stimulating workplace?
We're very lucky. I think we do have a bit of a name for retaining staff. I know we've got a few drivers who have been here for 10, 15 years, which is not uncommon in the bus industry, but yeah, I think they look at us as, you know, being approachable to be able to go and do other things. For example, we have drivers say, look, if you want to put on another minibus, I'm happy to drive it, or just little things like that, yeah, I think they know that we're open to new things, and yeah, accommodating them.
Fantastic. Chelsea, what is it for you on a 1 to 5 in relation to providing a motivating and stimulating workplace? And what's one thing perhaps that Dysons have done to achieve that?
I'd probably say 5. I think that if you are able to provide a workplace people want to work at and enjoy working at, then you actually end up benefiting from that too, with the output that your staff give you. So I think it's a two-way street there. I think if you can provide it, then you also get it in return. You put me on the spot with what Dysons do.
We can come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back to that one. I imagine there's probably heaps that actually Dysons do to retain your staff. And I think, do you have a cafe there of some sort that is a social welfare program of something? Did I read something? Yeah, I read something online about that. I think that in itself is a fantastic way to promote the company and retain staff and retain that interest. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Actually, my sister and I run that.
There we go.
So yeah, so it is really good. I think we get a lot of good feedback, particularly over the last year, that we only had to close for a couple of weeks, and the drivers said that they enjoyed being able to just come to work and stay at work. Didn't have to leave for lunch, didn't have to go out to shopping centres and expose themselves and everything. So it was, this year it's been good. But yeah, no, that didn't even cross my mind. It is good. I certainly enjoy it. Not having to rush and stop and get a coffee on my way to work. I can wait till I get there to have one. So yeah, we also have like a physio that drivers or any staff can see regularly. We have on-site health assist, so you know, if personal or professional issues, you can go and chat to someone during work hours. So there are a few additional things that we offer.
Fantastic, great answer. Let's move on to training and mentoring. On a 1 to 5, Chelsea, what do you think the importance of training and mentoring are? And we did hear a little bit about this in Rachel's session as well.
I feel like I want to say 5 again.
That's good. I'm pleased.
Yeah, I think that training someone to be able to do their job and know what they're doing and be confident is super important, especially if you're putting drivers out in situations where they can, unfortunately, they're not be great and have conflict and everything. So for them to have the right training to be able to manage that in an appropriate and safe manner is super important.
Fantastic. Going across to you, Jack, being from Gippsland in a smaller region, it's inspirational to hear what some of the larger companies are doing, and we take some inspiration from that to implement it. Sometimes it's not easy to implement these ideas across a smaller company, but I'm interested in hearing what your 1 to 5 priority for training and mentoring is, and perhaps how you approach that.
Yeah, I would say 5. It really is crucial. when you're training someone or putting someone on, for me to have the confidence to send them out into the workforce and not have to worry about, you know, if they have everything, if they're all set up, it's a lot. And also for the employee, it would be incredibly stressful to be sent out, say, on a school run into very rural central Victoria and not know where you're going or what you're doing. And I think one of the things that's really helped us along that line is throughout all our buses, we have GPSs and TomToms. So all the routes, everything's programmed in there. It wasn't long ago that it was really just the previous driver to the next driver saying, you know, this is where you go, this is what you do. But as everyone knows, how far compliance has come along in the last 10 years, it's really important just to make sure they're confident and they know what they're doing and we know what they're doing. It's good for everyone.
Fantastic, fantastic answer. And yes, I do know those school bus stops tend to move from one corner to the next, to the next, to the next. And anyway, we've all experienced that. So that's a great initiative. So we're almost running close to the end of our time. So I just want to finish off with a couple of questions to you. And the first one is podcasts. Do you listen to any podcasts, Jack? And what's some of your, if you do, what's your favorite podcast?
Yes, absolutely. Well, over the last 6 months, I've been doing a lot more work outside, helping wherever I can. It's a bit of a nerdy thing, but I really enjoy Dungeons and Dragons podcasts. They are just being able to put them on today and, you know, escape from, you know, maybe a stressful meeting in the morning or something. It's great. Podcasts are great value.
I agree, and I've been listening to more myself. I haven't listened to the Dungeons and Dragons ones, I must confess, but I might give it a shot.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'll give it a shot. Chelsea, podcasts. What's your favourite, and what are you listening to at the moment?
I tend to stick with short podcasts. My attention span is not very long, so I like the Squiz. It's a bit of a boring answer, but every morning it's about 7 or 8 minutes and just gives you a rundown of what happened, like all the news headlines and stuff. So I find that good to quickly get across what's happening and in a short, sharp way.
That's fantastic. It's a good idea just to get all that news compacted. Who hosts that?
I'm not sure, actually. I can't remember their names. It's it used to be through Commonwealth Bank, but I'm not sure. I think it might have changed recently. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a good one to look up as well. Completely from left field, what do you like to snack on, Chelsea? What's your favourite snack?
I'm a big fan of Carmen's oat bars at the moment.
We interviewed Carmen, well, not Carmen, her name's actually Caroline recently, and it's an amazing business that you can go online and you can actually even get free products from them that they're trialing. So check that out.
There you go. I will.
So Carmen's muesli bars. Jack, what's your go-to snack?
Mine's awful. Sour lollies. Sour lollies in the fridge. Yeah.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah, it's really.
And sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I'm finished.
And to finish off, Jack, when are you at your happiest?
The end of a successful week. Going for a run. I really enjoy running. So, you know, be able to get through a week where there's no major issues, and then Saturday morning going out for a trail run and just sort of blowing the neck off.
That's fantastic.
That's really good to me.
So clear the mind and get a bit of physical exercise at the same time.
Yeah, that's it.
Chelsea, when are you at your happiest?
Either when I take my dog to the dog park because he just loves it, and that makes me very happy seeing how much he loves it, or when I'm with my family.
They're great answers. That's lovely. Well, Julia, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So, yeah, just having a bit of a look to see if there's any questions, or do you have any questions yourself?
You know what, we're going to do one final breakout room. So what you'll see popping up in the chat box, I post some questions about other people's favourite podcasts and favourite snacks as well, if you want to share what you've been snacking on. But there's certainly some really interesting podcasts coming through there. But what we'll actually do is we'll break into one more breakout room, and there's two questions. Okay, there's two parts to this. I think the first one is like similar to what we've done before, any comments or observations about the discussion now that the wonderful discussion that we've had with Chelsea and Jack, and thinking about millennials. So have a think about what's come out of you from that wonderful session just now. And the second part is, what are you going to do now? We've been together for nearly 3 hours. We've gone through this entire age difference journey. What's one of the things that you're going to take back into the workplace? It could be a discussion that you're going to have or an action item. So 2 parts to the breakout room. Observations, comments, or even questions for Chelsea and Jack and Anna. And then the second part is, what are you going to do now? So Lisa, over to you for our last little zhuzh into the wilderness with our breakout rooms. And we'll see you back shortly just for some final comments. Everyone is back. Here we go. All right. Thank you all for coming back. What I would like you to do now, I'll invite you in the chat box just to write down any comments that have come out of that very quick discussion. Anything that you got, what are you going to do now? I think for me, attending something like this, and you've made a massive commitment today sitting in front of your laptop and your device, what's the one thing that you're going to do next week regarding some of the content that you've come through? So again, just in the chat box, pop in a couple of comments. Jerome, thank you. He says a great session. Thank you very much, Jerome, a fellow BusVic board member. We've got, as I said, some amazing podcast suggestions there. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't need any other voices in my head, but I thoroughly look at the recommendations that are there as well. All right. So, yep, feel free to pop in any comments there, including any questions or any last minute questions that you may have for our panelists today. All right. Well, I may go to the wrap-up end of town. So I do want to extend another big thank you to our speakers today, to Ash and Rachel, and the discussion panel that we had with Chelsea and Jack just now, expertly facilitated by Anna. Today has all been about perspectives, and it's been perspectives on the future workforce and the 100-year life. And we've looked at it from a superannuation perspective, ageing workforce, and then we've had some insights today from our next generation. And I think there's lots of things that are probably swirling around in our minds. Before I hand over to Chris Lowe, Executive Director of BusVic, for some final comments, I do want to say a big thank you for participating in this year's virtual event. I do encourage you to maintain the tradition of Women on Board, and I expect all of you now to get a glass of wine or something along those lines pre-lunch, and I hope you sit down to a 2-course lunch and have a guest speaker over the next couple of hours. So really do it properly, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on that. Once again, it's been an absolute delight being part of this group. A big virtual hug to you all, because that's time of day of which I will be doing that. But Chris Lowe, if I wouldn't mind handing over to you just for some final comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. I hope everyone can hear me okay. It's been a fantastic morning, hasn't it? We've covered so many issues relating to the age difference this morning. I hope you all got some learnings from this event, and that those learnings will help you with your business. I know I did. From the sublime to the ridiculous. You know, what I want is for the odd member to stop walking into my office and saying, Chris, can you have one of the girls in the office type this up for you, please? I want that to stop. And I also took my son to meet his grandfather just recently, and he pointed to this apparatus sitting in the corner of the room and said, Dad, what's that? I said, that's a typewriter, Ollie. He said, what's a typewriter? And I thought, there we have it. This is the conundrum that we face. Anyway, but thinking about that, I took a lot out of today's session. And scanning the industry over the last few years, it's my assessment that the industry actually does really well at issues concerning age, despite my bad example. So many of our members are exemplary when it comes to managing diversity and age issues. And if they weren't, so many people would not stay in the industry for as long as they do. Staff turnover in our industry is extremely low, and it's the envy of so many other industries. 1,000 years ago, when I worked in hospitality and development, our average turnover was about 50% every year. So half the people in the organisation would leave every single year. And I thank God every day that we don't have that problem in the bus industry. So I think events like this just help everybody improve on that again. I'd really like to thank everybody who made today possible, particularly Dave and Darren and Anthony and the guys at Volvo and CMV. You continue to sponsor this event, and that means a lot to us. I think Women on Board and Volvo CMV are now peas in a pod, and I look forward to that continuing on. Julia, thanks again for leading this seminar series. Is it 12 years now? Yeah.
I keep turning up. No one says no, so I keep turning up.
And I'm absolutely rapt that we managed to get just under 100 delegates registered for this event, when that's what we normally get when we're having it in person. So to get just under 100 to a virtual event is a sensational outcome. So thank you for helping us do that. I particularly need to thank Lisa and Lauren at the BAV, because this event has been seamless. The tech has not let us down when it normally does when we hold it in a venue. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Lisa, to make sure it's all gone smoothly. In fact, it's been seamless. To Anna, wonderful chairing of your session, Anna. Thank you very much, and for your contribution to the BAV board. Chelsea, Jack, Ash, Rachel, all terrific presentations, very insightful. Thank you very much. And lastly, to all of you delegates out there in Bus World, thank you for continuing to support this event. I know there's a lot of you who've supported it from day one, not just on the operator side, but also on the government side. Misha and all your friends at PTV, you've been coming to this for 10 years or so, and we're very, very grateful for your continued support. So I want to thank all of you that have been with us from day one. You've stayed with us, and that's a very rare thing in this day and age, so thank you. So it's now time to say goodbye. The good news is we will be back next year, and we'll be back face to face, in person, and we'll do it again over lunch and champagne. Woohoo! So I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. I know it's only November, but I'm probably not going to see you all until after Christmas. So I hope you all have a lovely Christmas, a peaceful New Year. We will be back out on the road in February and March, now that we're allowed to, for our branch meetings. So we very much look forward to catching up with you then. Thank you once again for attending today, and have a lovely day. Bye for now.